Hey everyone, this is Taehyung. Before we dive into today's story, I want to know where you're tuning in from. Drop your country in the comments because today I'm about to share something incredibly personal, something I never imagined I would announce publicly. For years, I kept this part of my life private, but now it's time to let you in. I just officially confirmed my wedding date. The moments leading up to this decision were not simple. I knew that revealing such news would spark countless reactions, both positive and negative. Yet, as I sat in reflection, surrounded by the people I trust most, I realized that living authentically was worth every ripple it might create. Friends reached out immediately. One called me directly, their voice steady yet filled with warmth. I'm proud of you, Tai. It takes courage to embrace your truth. Those words struck me harder than I expected. These were the people who had seen me at my most raw, who had stood beside me through every phase of my life. Their acceptance was more than comforting, it was a blessing. My parents, too, became a daily presence in my thoughts and calls. My mother reminded me, storms pass, Taehyung. What lasts is love. My father, in his quiet, deliberate way, said, you've chosen a path many fear to take. Stand tall in it. Their guidance echoed within me every time a shadow of doubt crept in. The reactions from fans surprised me most. Initially, there was shock. Messages poured in, some critical, some confused, some simply stunned. But gradually, I noticed letters filled with love, videos expressing heartfelt support, and stories from fans sharing their own experiences of love and honesty. Many wrote that seeing me speak my truth encouraged them to pursue love in their own lives. Others admitted tears at first, but eventually they cheered for my happiness. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Yet, I understood that not everyone would accept it. Some fans drifted away, some criticized loudly, some declared they could never support me again. The sting of disappointment reminded me that love, real love, comes with sacrifice. You cannot live authentically and simultaneously seek universal approval. One quiet night, as I lay beside her, the soft hum of the city filling our apartment, I whispered, do you regret saying yes? She turned toward me, her hand brushing mine. Never, she said. I shook my head, not even for a second. In that instant, I realized that the storm wasn't something to fear anymore. It was proof that our love was real, strong enough to withstand scrutiny. No matter what the world said, no matter how loud the noise became, the truth was simple. We had set our wedding date and we were stepping into it together. The headlines erupted. Fans reacted with tears, celebration, debate. Through it all, we stood side by side, choosing to focus not on the noise, but on the quiet strength of our love. And this was only the beginning. Even with the world aware of our plans, the external chatter didn't vanish. It grew louder. Speculation swirled around interviews I didn't give, articles I never approved, rumors that carried my name in bold letters. Some fans withdrew, others rallied even more passionately behind us. Yet, inside our shared world, a deeper process was unfolding. Preparation wasn't merely about the wedding, it was preparation for a life together. We started small, deliberating over choices for the ceremony. Indoor or outdoor, the city where I had lived most of my life, or somewhere quiet and private, away from cameras and crowds. Answers didn't come instantly. We lingered over these decisions, sometimes for hours over dinner, sometimes during walks beside the river. It doesn't matter where, she said one evening, her voice calm, unwavering. What matters is what we promise each other there. Her words struck me because, for so long, my life had revolved around presentation, perfection, and spectacle. Every stage, every performance demanded precision and polish. But this wasn't a performance. It wasn't about how the world would see us. It was about vows, promises meant to last longer than any spotlight, longer than any applause. One evening, sitting on her balcony with the city lights glowing below, I asked, "What does marriage mean to you?" She paused thoughtfully before responding. Marriage isn't just love. It's commitment when love is easy, and even more so when it isn't. It's showing up again and again when it's hard, when you're tired, when life feels heavier than expected. Marriage is choosing each other every single day. Her words sank into me. I realized I didn't merely want the passion of beginnings. I wanted the commitment that carries through every day. I wanted love resilient enough to endure storms, patient enough to mature, and strong enough to flourish in ordinary moments. That night, after she had fallen asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I reflected on years spent chasing perfection, chasing applause, chasing moments that didn't last. All of that, I realized, meant little without presence, without connection, without love that persists beyond the fleeting lights of fame. What I sought now wasn't perfection. It was honesty, it was presence, it was commitment that outlasted fear, criticism, and noise. The days that followed were filled with a quiet intensity. Wedding preparation was more than choosing flowers, venues, or attire. It became a practice in building a life together. We decided on simplicity over extravagance. Instead of a grand hall teeming with people, we wanted a small gathering. Family, close friends, the people who had witnessed our most vulnerable moments. Luxury wasn't the goal. Meaning was. We also chose to write our vows ourselves. No borrowed lines, no scripted promises, just words that reflected our hearts. I knew my vows wouldn't be polished or eloquent, but I also knew they would be honest. Every decision reminded me of how different this was from my life as an artist. Stages demanded flawless execution. Here, perfection had no place. Presence mattered more than any spotlight. Despite our commitment to privacy, the world still tried to intrude. Security concerns, guest lists, and the logistics of keeping the ceremony safe reminded me of the machinery behind fame. Rumors surfaced online about the location and even speculation about her identity. I tried to shield her from it, but she gently reminded me, "We're in this together. Don't carry it alone." Those words became my anchor, repeated in moments of doubt. This isn't about the world. This is about us. Preparation took on a rhythm beyond planning. We started creating small rituals that would form the foundation of our marriage. Cooking dinner together became a practice in partnership. Making everyday decisions was no longer trivial, it was training in communication, compromise, and shared responsibility. Each act, however ordinary, became a brick in the life we were building. One evening, standing on her balcony, as the city shimmered beneath us, she turned to me and said, "The wedding is just one day. What matters is the marriage, the days after, every day we live together. That's what we're preparing for." I nodded, feeling the truth of her words sink in. The wedding would be a beautiful milestone, yes, but it was only a doorway. The real work, the real magic, existed in the quiet, ordinary, everyday acts of love. As the date approached, anticipation grew. Nights were restless, filled with both excitement and nerves. I pictured her walking toward me the moment I would stand before her and declare my promises. The mix of anxiety and peace churned inside me, a tension unlike anything I had felt before on stage. This wasn't performance, it was the most vulnerable, authentic moment of my life. I reflected on my parents' marriage, observing how love had endured challenges, disagreements, and exhaustion. What stayed with me was not the struggle, but the way they continually returned to each other, the small acts of care that sustained decades together. That I realized was what I wanted: love grounded in persistence, presence, and everyday choices. We practiced rituals together, preparing meals, folding laundry, supporting each other through moments of fatigue or stress. Even minor gestures became symbols of our commitment. One evening, she said something that stayed with me. Marriage isn't about one day, it's about the practice of loving, choosing, and showing up every day. Her words anchored me more than I could have imagined. Despite our focus on intimacy and presence, the external world refused to quiet down. Headlines and speculation swirled, fans debated, media outlets scrutinized. I found myself caught between two realities: the private, tender life we were nurturing and the public spectacle that seemed determined to intrude. Yet, whenever anxiety rose, I returned to her words. "This is about us." That was enough. With the ceremony just a week away, I confessed my fears. What if I fail her? What if I'm not the partner she deserves? She looked at me calmly and said, "We will fail sometimes. That's not the point. The point is that we keep choosing each other anyway." Her words pierced through my doubts. Marriage wasn't about never faltering. It was about never walking away. In the final week, our days were a mix of joyful and tense moments. We laughed while trying on outfits, wrote vows late into the night, and dealt with logistical concerns from planners. Security checks, seating arrangements, and photography details reminded me of the machinery of celebrity life, but each time her calm presence grounded me. She reminded me again and again that the ceremony was only a reflection of what we were building, a shared life rooted in love. 3 days before the wedding, I visited the venue alone. It was a secluded garden, hidden behind high walls, the air scented with pine and freshly turned earth. Rows of white chairs awaited our loved ones, and a simple archway draped with fabric marked the space where we would stand. As I imagined her walking toward me, my chest tightened not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. The boy I once was, the shy, uncertain teenager dreaming of stages and applause, stood in the memory of who I was. And the man I had become, ready to stand before the people who mattered most, was about to make the most vulnerable promise of his life. I sat at my desk that night, writing my vows. My hand trembled not because of uncertainty, but because I wanted the words to reflect my truth. I wrote about how she made me more myself than I had ever been, how small gestures and quiet moments revealed love's depth. I promised to keep choosing her even when life became complicated. I vowed to be present, to walk with her through storms, and to celebrate sunshine together. The words weren't polished, but they were genuine. Reading them back, tears blurred the page. The night before the wedding, sleep escaped me. I paced my apartment, heart racing, the city unusually quiet. I whispered to myself, "This is real. This is happening." I thought about the next morning, putting on my suit, stepping into the garden, seeing her eyes, hearing her voice. My nerves were intense, but beneath them was a serenity I had never known. I realized that no matter what happened outside, the only certainty I needed was within us. We had confirmed our wedding date and we were entering it together. The ceremony, the vows, the garden, it was all the prelude to a life that had already begun quietly in our daily practice of love, patience, and presence. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly, before the sun had even begun its climb. I woke long before the alarm, heart pounding, a mixture of nerves and anticipation coursing through me. For years, mornings had been routines of rehearsals, schedules, and preparation for the stage. Today was different. Today was about standing before the person I loved and making promises no spotlight could ever replicate. I dressed carefully but without obsession. The suit fit perfectly, but for the first time, perfection wasn't the goal. Presence was. I paused in front of the mirror, tracing the line of my tie, reflecting on the boy I had been, the shy, hopeful teenager who sometimes wondered if love was truly possible under the scrutiny of fame. And now I was about to marry the woman who had shown me the fullness of it. The venue was serene. The hidden garden glowed with soft morning light, the faint scent of blossoms in the air. White chairs lined the paths, and the simple archway awaited us. There were no flashing cameras, no extravagant decorations, just truth and simplicity. Family arrived first. My mother's eyes glistened with tears. My father's quiet pride spoke volumes. My bandmates appeared, teasing and joking, but their smiles carried deep warmth. And then the moment came. She appeared at the edge of the garden, the world fading around us. She wore a simple dress, elegant in its modesty. Her eyes locked with mine, and every doubt, every nervous thought melted away. Each step she took was a step toward me, toward us, toward the life we had chosen together. I felt tears prick my eyes not from spectacle, but from authenticity. The ceremony was not about grandeur, it was about connection. When she reached me, I took her hand, warm, steady, grounding. The officiant began to speak of love and commitment, but for me, the real ceremony unfolded in the silent exchange of hands, glances, and breath between us. Then came the vows. I unfolded the small paper I had written, my hands trembling slightly. I spoke of the first moments we had shared, of how she had made me more fully myself, of the lessons in love and patience she had taught me. I promised to choose her every day, to be present, to navigate the storms together, to celebrate joys in tandem. My voice cracked, tears spilling freely. She squeezed my hand, her own tears falling. Her vows followed, steady and tender. She spoke of seeing me beyond the public persona, recognizing the man behind the stage, loving him fully. She promised to walk beside me, to remind me of who I am when the world grows loud, to choose me each day. Every word struck deep, resonating with all I had felt, all I had learned about love and commitment. The officiant smiled and said the words I had waited for. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. And in that moment, the world shifted. Applause and cheers blurred into the background. Only the warmth of her lips, the intertwining of our hands, the shared tears mattered. We were married. The remainder of the ceremony passed in a blur. Laughter, hugs, congratulations. Family members embracing us tightly, friends clinking glasses in celebration. The day wasn't grand, but it was perfect. Later, as the sun began to set, we slipped away for a few quiet moments. Beneath a tree at the edge of the garden, she leaned against me, head resting on my shoulder. We did it, I whispered. She smiled, eyes closed. Yes, we did. The wedding wasn't the end, it was the continuation of a journey. Every small choice, every act of love had led us here. The ceremony was only a doorway. The real story was in the life we would build together, in the practice of love, patience, and presence. The day after the wedding was peaceful. No cameras, no schedules, just the sound of birds, the faint sunlight spilling into our room, her quiet breathing beside me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of expectations pressing down. I was no longer simply Taehyung the artist. I was Taehyung the husband, and the feeling was almost too good to believe. Our life together began in ordinary ways that carried extraordinary meaning. Simple meals, walks along familiar streets, shared chores, all became acts of love, practiced in partnership. Washing dishes side by side, folding laundry together, laughing at small mishaps, each became a ritual, a building block of the life we were creating. The outside world continued its chatter. Headlines debated, fans speculated, media questioned. Initially, I read everything, felt the pressure, the scrutiny. Over time, I realized the noise no longer held power over me. When I came home, love awaited. In the quiet of our shared space, there was peace. That peace was more valuable than applause, more profound than headlines. Even my music began to transform. Lyrics that once felt like performance now resonated as confessions. Songs of longing were no longer just stories. They reflected my lived experience. Fans noticed the change. Some commented that my voice now carried warmth and grounding, a deeper authenticity. I understood why. The notes now came from a place of fulfillment, of love lived, not just imagined. Marriage, I learned, is not the conclusion of a story. It is the beginning of a deeper, harder narrative. It is practice, patience in misunderstanding, compromise in differing preferences, humility in recognizing one's flaws, forgiveness when words wound. There were moments I faltered, moments exhaustion clouded my attentiveness, moments when the pressures of fame crept back in. But every time she reminded me gently that love is in the returning, in the choosing, again and again. Confirming the wedding date had been more than a public announcement. It was a declaration of identity, of choice, of values. It was planting a flag in my life and saying, "This is who I am. This is what I choose. This is the person I will walk with into the future." The boy who once doubted love had found it in the quietest places. The man who feared marriage had discovered that it simplified the most important truth. Love is about choosing every single day. To fans listening, I wanted them to know this. The love I found does not take away from the connection I share with them. If anything, it deepens it. The music, the performances, the life I live, all are stronger when rooted in authenticity. Love doesn't diminish dreams, it fuels them. It doesn't take you away from your purpose, it grounds you in it. It doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. The future now is ordinary yet extraordinary. Every morning, practicing the vows we made, building a home not from walls but from trust, respect, and laughter. Continuing to create music with a heart more open than ever. Loving my wife, not just in words, but in actions every single day. And in this life, I have realized that the greatest love stories do not always begin with fireworks, they begin quietly, with gestures of care, patience, and devotion. Yes, the wedding date was confirmed. Yes, the world reacted. Yes, it changed everything. But what matters most is not the date, the headlines, or the opinions. It is this. Beside her, I am not just Taehyung, the performer. I am Taehyung, the man who chose love and will keep choosing it every day. This is the story of what comes next. The vows have been spoken, the promises have been made, and the rest of the story begins now. The weeks that followed our wedding settled into a rhythm both simple and profound. Life wasn't about the grandeur of an event or the flashes of cameras, it was about the quiet moments, the ordinary rituals that became the backbone of our togetherness. Mornings began with coffee shared on the balcony, the city slowly waking beneath us, our conversation flowing freely without performance or expectation. We learned to navigate the mundane together, the grocery store aisles, the tiny domestic frustrations, the little triumphs that didn't require an audience. Each act, however small, was a choice, a reaffirmation of our bond. I discovered a new kind of vulnerability. Fame had always demanded a controlled self, a polished version of me that existed for the world. But in marriage, there was no stage, no script. There was only honesty, and it could be terrifying. There were times when I returned home exhausted from schedules, my patience fraying. There were moments when my mind drifted to headlines, rumors, and social pressures. Yet, every time I faltered, she reminded me gently that love wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, effort, and the courage to return again and again. We created our own rituals, small but sacred. Cooking together became more than nourishment. It was practice in patience, collaboration, and shared joy. Folding laundry side by side, discussing plans for the week, or simply watching a quiet evening turn into night, these moments, seemingly trivial, became the foundation of our life. I learned that the extraordinary in love often hides in the ordinary, in the repetition, in the choices made over and over without fanfare. Music too began to transform in a way I had never anticipated. Lyrics I had once sung with detachment now carried weight and emotion rooted in lived experience. Songs about love and longing took on new dimensions. They became reflections of my journey, of the commitment I was living every day. Fans began to notice the difference, commenting on the warmth and authenticity in my voice. I realized that my art had been amplified, not diminished, by love. Authenticity was its own form of power, and it resonated far deeper than applause ever could. As days turned into weeks, I also discovered the subtler lessons marriage demanded: patience when misunderstandings arose, humility when I recognized my own faults, and the art of compromise when our preferences clashed. Arguments were no longer battles to win, but opportunities to understand, to choose each other over ego, over pride. Forgiveness became a daily practice, not an abstract idea. And slowly, imperceptibly at first, I began to see how deeply love could reshape a life, not just in its joys, but in its challenges. Family remained central. My parents watched quietly as we carved out our own path. My mother often reminded me, with a gentle smile, that love is the truest form of endurance. My father, ever stoic, nodded in approval at the small ways we supported and respected each other. My bandmates visited frequently, their laughter and camaraderie, a comforting reminder of the life I had outside the home. Yet, they too respected our space, understanding that this chapter belonged to us, to our choices, to the life we were building together. Public scrutiny, though present, no longer dictated my emotional state. Headlines, online speculation, and fan commentary initially tugged at me. But over time, I realized that the external noise could not penetrate the sanctuary we had created. When I returned home, when I saw her waiting, the world's pressures melted away. The focus shifted from what others thought I should be to what we were creating together: a life rooted in trust, honesty, and mutual care. Even the simplest moments carried meaning: a rainy afternoon spent cooking, a quiet night under the city lights, or the shared laughter over a minor household mishap became milestones in our journey. Each ordinary day was extraordinary in its own right because it reflected commitment, choice, and a deep-seated joy that no performance could replicate. We began to understand that love's depth isn't measured by grand gestures, but by consistency, by showing up for each other day after day without fanfare or expectation. I also began to reflect more deeply on my own growth. For years, I had measured success in applause, perfection, and public recognition. I realized now that these markers were fleeting. Real accomplishment, real fulfillment came from connection, from authenticity, from the courage to embrace vulnerability. Love had become a mirror, reflecting not just who I was, but who I could become when I allowed myself to be seen fully. The lessons of marriage extended beyond our own relationship. I found myself more empathetic, more patient, and more aware of the struggles of those around me. Friendships deepened as I carried lessons of listening, understanding, and patience into all aspects of life. My interactions with fans, too, evolved. I no longer viewed their support as a one-way transaction. I sought connection, honesty, and a shared experience, knowing that love and authenticity could bridge the gap between public figure and private individual. Yet, even amidst these revelations, life remained unpredictable. Schedules shifted, unexpected challenges arose, and pressures from work occasionally intruded. But each time I returned to the principles we had established: presence, patience, and partnership. Marriage was not about avoiding difficulty, it was about navigating it together. It was about making the conscious choice to face life's storms with a hand to hold, a heart that listens, and a spirit committed to perseverance. I began documenting small reflections, moments of gratitude, lessons learned, joys discovered. In these writings, I recorded the evolution of love, the transformation from youthful infatuation to mature, resilient partnership. I wrote about the comfort of her presence, the reassurance of shared understanding, the beauty of mutual growth. These reflections became my anchor, my reminder that love is both journey and practice, process and destination. Evenings often became times of quiet contemplation. We would sit together, sometimes speaking, sometimes silent, simply enjoying the rhythm of life unfolding. I learned to appreciate the spaces between words, the comfort of shared presence, and the profound intimacy of mutual understanding. I realized that these quiet moments, devoid of spectacle, were the heart of marriage. They were where love was lived, not performed. Looking back, I understood that confirming our wedding date was not just an announcement, it was a turning point, a public affirmation of private truth. It marked a commitment to authenticity, courage, and enduring love. And while the world may continue to watch, speculate, and react, the real story exists in the quiet daily choices we make. Each sunrise, each shared meal, each evening of reflection becomes part of the narrative we are writing together. This life, ordinary yet extraordinary, was a testament to the power of love lived consciously. The boy who once doubted, the young man who feared vulnerability, the celebrity always on stage had become a husband, a partner, a man committed to building a life of depth, joy, and meaning. Love had become my foundation, my compass, my deepest truth. As I sit now, reflecting on the weeks that have passed since our wedding, I recognize the profound change that has taken root. Not in headlines, not in public opinion, not in applause, but in the quiet moments of shared life. The vows we spoke were not merely words. They are a living practice, a continuous act of choosing, nurturing, and sustaining love. And as we step forward, hand in hand, I feel prepared. Prepared not because life is predictable, but because we are committed. Prepared not because the world will understand, but because we understand each other. Prepared not because love removes challenges, but because it teaches resilience, empathy, and the courage to face life together. This is the reality of what it means to marry, to choose, to grow, to live authentically. And in this ongoing journey, I find peace, fulfillment, and the deepest form of joy I have ever known. The wedding was only the beginning. The life we are building is the story that will endure, the testament to love lived fully, honestly, and fearlessly. The months after our wedding unfolded like a carefully composed symphony, each day adding a new layer to the melody of our lives. I began to notice the subtle ways love transforms everyday existence. A glance across the room, a hand offered at the right moment, a shared laugh over the smallest mishap. These were the notes of our ongoing harmony. Marriage, I realized, is not a destination, but an art form, a constant creation requiring attention, patience, and wholehearted participation. Even in public life, the rhythm of commitment shaped my choices. I no longer measure success purely by chart rankings, awards, or public adoration. Instead, I ask myself, does this choice honor the life we are building together? Does it allow me to be present, honest, and grounded? Decisions that once seemed trivial, accepting a schedule change, turning down an engagement that would stretch me thin now, carried new weight because I knew the life waiting for me at home deserved my presence. Family remained central. My parents, ever steady, observed this growth quietly but attentively. My mother often shared simple insights, sometimes over tea, sometimes in a quiet note left on the kitchen counter. Patience is love in motion, she would say, and I began to understand the depth of that statement in ways I never had before. My father's quiet approval was no less meaningful. It was an acknowledgement that the life we were building together was strong, deliberate, and anchored in values that mattered beyond recognition or applause. Friends and colleagues also adapted to the shift. Bandmates offered support in ways that went beyond camaraderie. They checked in, they listened, they celebrated our growth. Their presence was a reminder that love does not exist in isolation. It exists alongside community, shared joy, and mutual respect. While our marriage was private, the support network around us became an extension of the values we were cultivating: loyalty, trust, and authenticity.